Dr. Jazz. Dr.
No,
Jazz.
I also I wanted to ask you. I listened to the other day to Darn That Dream on your
Right.
YouTube channel, and man, it's amazing. I mean, I have the album Artistry, which is like now 29 years old, and
Yeah,
like
it
it
must
starts
be.
with polka dots and moonbeams, 8 minutes, and what you do with it's incredible. And I wanted to ask you,
Oh.
how do you approach a standard or a tune in any way playing solo? Because you do all these incredible, intricate internal things, but still the melody is always there. And like, how do you approach a solo guitar performance?
Yeah, I mean, the way I improvise is very melodic. You can look at improvisation, you can look at music as being three elements of melodic, harmonic, and rhythmic. And you can use any of those three, or actually all three, as your framework. So usually the way jazz improvisation is taught is improvising on the harmonic element. So playing over changes, that kind of thing. So which is absolutely valid, of course. But then you can actually use the melody as your framework as well. And that's how a lot of the early jazz players, that's how they played. Django Reinhardt, Louis Armstrong, Lester Young.
Yeah.
All of they were never too far away from the melody. They would go off on a tangent, but there was always that reference coming back. And actually, from my experience, having played many kinds of jazz as well, is that it's actually the hardest, the deepest, and the most profound way to improvise. If you listen, if you want a lesson in that kind of improvisation, just listen to Django Reinhardt's improvised solo on I'll See You in My Dreams.
Okay.
And it's an absolute classic, how he weaves and interprets this melody and then turns it into something else, and how it logically moves on. A guitar player like Jim Hall is a perfect example of that, of working with a melody, taking it somewhere else, from there. Everything follows on. So it's not like a jigsaw puzzle, it's or painting by numbers. Okay, I can play this. I can play this scale here, this scale there, this scale there, because it just sounds like that. But even if you do that, but you also don't forget the melodic element as well, and still have that as a bit of a framework, then that will help. You can also use rhythmic, of course, the rhythmic aspects, which is often forgotten about or neglected. So you can have rhythmic phrases and work on those rhythmic phrases, repeat that rhythmic phrase over a different chord. And when things are flowing, you're not going, okay, now I'm using the rhythmic
Sure.
But that's what happens. You just draw upon it, as you need it. But I started out playing in bands. So I started out
really early, or
I started playing when I was 4.
4. Are you kidding me? Wow.
Yeah. My dad my dad started to play around about the same time as me. So he was 30 before he took up music.
Oh, wow. Incredible.
And he got a guitar because he was a big fan of Django Reinhardt and the Hot Club of France. So he got a guitar. It was something he always wanted to do and never had that opportunity. And so when he was 30, he took up the guitar. So I became absolutely mesmerized by this. And I then I wanted to play it. So he got me a little ukulele. So as I was about 3 years old. So he saw that I had an aptitude for that. Then he got me a little guitar, and then as he saw that it was, music is one thing that I've always understood. There's many things, most things I haven't got a clue about. But, when I went to school and I was in classes and they were talking about mathematics, I didn't know what they were, physics, I didn't know what they were going on about. But music, I understood. And if I could relate something to music, then I understood it. So I understood music. So I made progress very quickly. And my dad, he said, I tell you what, he says, I think you should play the guitar. He said, I'm going to get a double bass because you can never get a bass player. So he got double bass and he handed the guitar over to me. But what my dad did, because he wasn't a schooled musician at all, he didn't read or write music, he didn't go to college, he just picked it up by ear, as I did. But I remember once when I was very small, probably about 6 years old, and he was playing a recording of Django playing, I think it was Sweet Georgia Brown, because he was teaching me how to play Sweet Georgia Brown, the melody. Yeah. And then it went into this other thing after he played the melody. And then my dad said to me, he said, that's incredible. Do you know what he's doing there? Now he's saying this to a 6-year-old kid. He said, you know what he's doing there? He's improvising. I said, well, what's that? He said, he's played the melody over those chords and they're still playing those chords, but he's making up his own melody on top of that as he goes off the top of his head. It's not, he hasn't worked it out ahead of time. He's just making up another melody. So that clicked with me.
Such a simple explanation, actually, which is true.
It's just a simple explanation. Yeah. And that's how I teach improvisation to my students, because many of them don't come from a jazz background. And then I say, like on my guitar retreats or on my online guitar school, I say, okay, now let's improvise, and you can see them, kind of tense up. Oh no! Yeah. I said, nothing to be afraid of. You've got the melody, So you've got a melody going. So let's say, I just said Sweet Georgia Brown.
Yeah. Da, 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 da.
Okay, that's your melody. So just vary it slightly.
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, that's just something off the top of my head. And then when you play the next bit,
yeah.
And just get into it that way. You've got to know what the chord structure is. Obviously, you have to work around that. You can't just go off on a tangent. Well, you can later, but you've got to know what you're doing when you do that. But if you start from that point, if you start from the melody, you can fan out from there. You can get as way out as you want from that. But you will always have that grounding of the structure.
Yeah.
The melodic and the harmonic structure. And of course you can bring in the rhythmic as well.
Yeah.
So that's really how I got into improvising, and I found it very easy. Then I would hear a phrase that I like. My dad would have records of Ben Webster, Coleman Hawkins, all these great saxophonists, or Errol Garner on the piano.
Yeah, I love him.
And they'd maybe play one phrase that I liked. I thought, I like that, and maybe it was on one tune. But because I understood the harmony, and I could see that a lot of these harmonic structures, chord sequences, repeated themselves in other music. I could identify them. So I was like, that will, and I mean, I didn't actually sit down and work it out, but as I was playing, that's the same as that, and I instinctively knew that then that phrase that I learned from an Errol Garner piano solo, would fit there. And then because I was more adventurous, I didn't want to play it exactly the same. So I then adapted.
That's the idea. Yeah.
So you've got to have a vocabulary, And the best way to learn vocabulary is just to think of music, think of jazz improvisation as a language.
Yeah,
And
sure.
the way you learn a language is by copying. You know, as your first language, you learn that from your mother, your father, everyone around you, and then you start putting it all together, and you copy their speech patterns. After a while, you become your own kind of person, and all those influences that have happened to you make the way you speak and how you express yourself. But don't be, you know, I would say, don't be afraid to copy.
Yeah.
But if you do copy from the best.
Yeah, true.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
And that will be, you will then begin with that. You know, I wrote, it's actually here at the moment. I wrote 3 books on improvisation, and the last one is called Guitar Etudes, where I just take chord sequences and I improvise on them. Now that's the third of the books. And the other ones go into all kinds of things, show you some phrases and things. And then that one, you can actually play along to it. There's notation and tab as well. And basically learn my solo, but then don't play my solo.
Yeah.
You know, use that as your starting point. You don't have to play all of the solo. If they're just, as I did, I never learned an entire Django solo note for note. Note for note, but I picked out little phrases that I liked. Oh, I can that will go there. You know, found my own thing. So it's just like, if you're learning a language, a dictionary is going to be no use to you.
Yeah,
you don't get the dictionary of that language, because that's for reference. So a lot of the things that we do when we're taught, well, I wasn't taught improvisational, but if you go somewhere and you're taught improvisation, a lot of the time you start off working with the dictionary.
Yeah.
You don't need that. You need a phrase book. You need a tourist's phrase book.
Yeah. How are you? Where are you?
How are you?
Yeah, exactly.
How do I get to the train station? One more beer, please. Another beer.
Yeah. But Martin, just what I wanted to ask you, like, let's say, okay, you said Sweet Georgia Brown, or let's say it's St. Thomas. It's kind of in C. You could improvise when you were a kid. But let's say, how did you then approach a tune that had, you know, changes of scales because you didn't know the knowledge of theory yet, or like Solar, or how did you approach then like that when things started to change when you were so young?
I learned the theory after.
Okay.
It started to make sense then. And I think that is the best way. If you think humans, we've had music in every single civilization since the beginning of time, even if it was just banging on a piece of wood or whatever, or blowing into a shell. We had this urge to make music, or obviously singing is the natural voice, just expressing ourselves with singing. So I'm sure in these, civilization, even places now when that don't have all of this like music education, and when a guy says to his son, "Okay, this is a song that's been passed down to us from our ancestors," the son or the daughter don't go, "Okay, Dad, give me the tab."
Exactly.
What are the changes? They're just going to copy it, and that's the way to go. And then you can find out how it works later.
Yeah,
it's not important. Just jump in and play music, and you can find out the what for and the why for later. So obviously when I started, when I say.
Yeah, okay. For instance,
As an example there, okay, I know how that works.
Yeah.
I didn't know how that worked when I was a 6-year-old kid, but later because of the accumulated knowledge over 60 years, I know how I can improvise on that.
Yeah.
I can't remember how it goes. suppose now. my
but
mind's gone a bit blank. It's very early in the morning.
it's
here.
very early. Yeah.
So I know how to maneuver my
Yeah.
way around that, and even that I'm playing it very melodically. You know,
Yeah.
I would improvise.
Yeah.
I think it goes somewhere like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have that structure in my mind. So
Yeah.
it's a bit like having an artist having a pencil sketch, and a lot of the time, you know, it's like having a coloring in book.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you have the, you know those books. You have the outline, and then it's up to you how you color it in. So
Yeah.
if you have that basic structure, my dad was a bass player. I always listened out for the bass. So
Sure.
the first piece of information I want when I'm learning something, I just want to know what the bass line is, what the root notes are.
Yeah.
From the root note, the second piece of information is very simple. Is it a major or is it a minor?
Yeah.
So that is our basic structure. That's the frame.
Yeah.
And then all the other intervals are the colors. And how you decide how you're going to color that in. You know,
Yeah.
so you have
True.
no, so we got I remember the first time I heard a major seventh chord. I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
it was the most sophisticated sound I'd ever heard.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
Wow, look at that. And then a six, that's jazzy.
Yeah.
How nice that is. And you bring a little bit of edge and a bit of sunshine into it with a nine.
Yeah.
You've got and it's no secret why. Then you've got a melody like.
Yeah. Exactly.
You've got the sunshine, sophistication, jazziness to
Yeah.
it. A dominant seventh that wants to go somewhere. That's a traveling note. A +5 is also a traveling note. A sharpened 9, which is like the minor third against the third. That
Yeah.
gives us that edginess.
Yeah.
Add the dominant seventh. James Brown.
Yeah.
Okay, so flat 5, the devil's note, the jazzy note. So all of these have a flavor. If you have a major seventh here,
Yeah.
that's sparkly high up.
Yeah.
Take it down an octave.
Yeah.
It's
It's
dark.
completely different. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like being an artist or a chef.
Yeah, I always compare it to spices. When I teach the students, I'm like, you have salt and pepper, but now we need, like, you know, coriander, or I don't know, throw in
Exactly.
something.
That major seventh, that's lemony. You know,
Yeah,
that's lemonade, isn't it? It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Or it's a martini.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can use all these analogies. So that's how I look at it. And so I don't think from a technical point of view, I can play a 6 in here.
Yeah.
I'm instinctively feeling it that I want to have that jazzier edge. So if you're going, you've got the blues scale, minor pentatonic. You want to make that jazzy, you immediately introduce a 6 and a 9.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you go between the two, and you've got a kind of a jazz blues, and you instinctively know that. But you do need to have an idea of what you're doing, even if it's not a theoretical one. You know the spices to use.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
herbs to use.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you, like, as a teenager, then learn this a lot on stage also, just by like trial and error and mistakes, or like how did this go with you? Like,
yeah, well, before that, I think I did my first gig with my dad when I was 8.
wow.
And then my dad had a little band that used to play at dances, you know, like village dances, weddings,
Oh,
all those
wow.
kind of things. So when I was 11, I started to play in that band from the age of 11 to 14.
Oh wow.
And then at the age of 14, I joined a couple of jazz groups, professional. They were actually
Already.
professional.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I mean half of the band were professional and half were semi-professional, but they were like a professional standard band. And
Yeah.
I
Wow.
always played with adults. I didn't play with
That's
my own generation. So, but I used to go along with my dad if he had a gig, and I'd see him putting his double bass in the car, and I might say, "Where are you playing tonight?" And we lived just outside of London when I was a kid, and he saw I'm playing at the so. There were all these pubs in London that had jazz, but they had a listening audience. You know, it wasn't like pubs now that they just got TV screens showing football and soccer. It was completely different. People didn't have mobile phones, so people used to get there early,
incredible.
get a front seat to hear the band. So my dad used to do all these gigs, and he'd sometimes say to me, "Do you want to come?" And I say, "Yeah, okay, I'll come along." And I'd get my guitar and amp, put it in the car, and I'd go along and I'd sit and listen for a while. Then he'd say to the band, "Can my boy come up and play?" And then my dad always just say, "Come up, play 2 tunes, and then get off."
Yeah.
Or at least walk, because it's the kind of the protocol. You do 2 tunes, and then you go, and I'd stand up to get off, and then usually most of the time they would say, no, stay on, do another one. So I'd end up doing the rest of the gig, and I learned from that. And as I said, my dad wasn't a schooled musician.
Yeah.
And he told me something once when we were playing a tune that I didn't know. And my dad had a good sense of humor, and he said to me, if you ever get lost in a tune, he said, just play Honeysuckle Rose. Or play the chords to Honeysuckle Rose. Now, why is that?
Yeah.
Because it's a 2-5-1. These tunes are full of 2-5-1s. But he didn't say to me, identify the 2-5-1s. He said, just think of Honeysuckle Rose, and you'll find your way back. So I learned everything by ear.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And that's the way I did. Then when I was 15, I left school and joined a band and went to the north of England to play with this band. Then shortly after that, when I was 16, the band I was in, we went on the QE2. We went to New York.
Oh wow, man!
And
so that's like early 70s, or
that was 73.
73. Yeah. Oh wow,
1973.
incredible.
So I went to New York in 1973, and then spent the winter playing in one of the bands on the QE2 around the Caribbean.
Oh wow!
Then came back again.
That's incredible.
So that was the kind of start. Then I came back, and then I started doing other stuff. First of all, I had a lot of work offered my way in London, and BBC radio broadcasts and things. So I went there for a while. So really, from 1973 to 1999, those 7 years were. Those first 7 years were the only years that I was actually like a freelance gigging musician, doing all kinds of things. But I wasn't a rock player. I didn't play country music. I was more of a jazz player. So there were certain things that I just kind of fitted into. And I did all these radio broadcasts. Then I made my first album in 1978 with Peter, the bass player.
Green Dolphin Street on it. I love that one. Yeah.
That's God, you know that.
Yeah. Tailor-made, right?
Tailor-made. Then we made a couple.
How you play that, the Green Dolphin, and like it's really, it's beautiful.
We changed key, didn't we? I think.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And you play Emily also, I think, and something.
Well, that's a long time ago.
Yes.
But I'm at that point I met a guitar player called Ike Isaacs, who was Ike Isaacs was a pretty well-known guitar player in the UK. I used to listen to him on the radio when I was a kid. There was a BBC program called guitar club
Oh, wow.
that was hosted by a guitar player called Ken Sikora, and he would always have guests. Ike was a regular guest, but they'd have like a young Eric Clapton would come on, and Hank Marvin,
cool.
and
Oh, wow.
so I used to listen to that. So when I met, what happened actually when I was 19, one of the clubs I used to play with my dad, the 100 Club, the 100 Club in Oxford Street in London. That was I believe it's still going. It's the oldest jazz club, although it did other things as well. It's where punk started, actually. The Sex Pistols started.
Oh, really?
At the 100 Club as well, but it was really known as a jazz club. So when I was 19, the guy that owned the club, Roger Horton, he said to me, "Do you like Barney Kessel?" I said, "Yeah, I've got lots of Barney Kessel records." He said, "Well, I've got him coming here to play. Would you like to play the support?" So I said, "Yeah," because being naive and everything. Yeah, I can do that. So I played with the house trio as the support, and I met Barney, and that was the beginning of a long friendship. And I worked a lot with Barney. I was in the Great Guitars for a while with Charlie and Barney when Herb went back to work with Oscar Peterson. So that in the audience was Ike Isaacs, and at that time he was the guitar player with Stephane Grappelli.
That's how this connection happened then, slowly.
That's how the first connection. So when I was 19, I met Stephane for the first time, but I didn't work with him straight away. It wasn't till 3 years later, when I was 22. By that time, Ike had left, but I worked sometimes with the bass player that was working with Stephane at that time, and the bass player said that the guitar player that was doing it couldn't make this 4 or 5 dates in France and Belgium, and would I like to do it? So I went so I jumped to that opportunity, and I went and did 4 dates with Stephane, thinking that would kind of be it. But we really kind of hit it off because I was 22. And he was amazed that I knew all the tunes. He thought, this young kid, we're going to have to teach him all this stuff. And he called out any tune, and I knew it because that's the music I grew up with. And he thought maybe I'd only know Rolling Stones and Beatles songs. So any tune he called, including a lot of the Hot Club tunes, I knew them, and I knew what key they were in and everything. So we got on really well. And then at the end of that, he said that he had a tour of America in a few months' time. Would I like to go on it? And I said, yeah, great. So I did this tour of America. At the end of that, he said, I've got a tour of England. Would you like to do that? So I did that. And this kind of went on for 11 years. So I always say to this day, I don't even really know if I was in the band or not. It was kind of, that's how it sort of worked. But in between that, I was still doing my own things as well. But it was just so great to do that because, for a jazz guitar player to find yourself sitting in Django Reinhardt's chair is, it's like the dream, the dream gig. Or some it would terrify. It didn't for me because I didn't play like Django, and Stephane didn't want me to play like Django. Sure. He wanted me to play the way he played. The way he played kind of changed by that time. Yeah. It become very, it's just he played the Great American Songbook, and he'd really turned into this virtuoso violinist. And it was more. It was still swinging, but it was more kind of ornamented and flowery. His playing, he continued to develop and get better right through to his 80s, up until when he died. So I became part of that world. So at that point, then things kind of changed. My 7 years as a gigging freelance guitar player ended, and then between Stephane's things, going to America was great for me because then one of the things it did was I got an audience. Who's that kid playing the guitar? Who's that young guy playing the guitar? And then I made an album for Concord Records around that time. Well, I made two records with Stephane for Concord, and then I made one of my own, and that was at the same time as Emily Remler was signed with Concord, and Emily and I used to play together a lot.
Really?
In
Oh
America.
man! Wow.
In fact, I found a photograph just the other day. Somebody found it that took a photograph of us, because I only had one really bad grainy photograph of us.
Wow.
He found this photograph, which I put up on Facebook.
She was amazing, right? I mean, I know I
was.
have her albums, but like, you know.
Yeah, well, the next record I was going to make for Concord was with Emily, a duo album. But I went back home to Scotland, where I still live.
Mm-hmm.
I went back home. In the meantime, Emily met Larry Coryell, who I also worked with. She met Larry Coryell. They got together and they became a partnership, and lived together. And because I wasn't around, Larry said, "Oh yeah, let's do an album." So it all happened with Concord. So our album never happened. There's just one very bad recording of us in a club outside Washington DC, outside Baltimore, of us, but it's not very good sound quality. It was done on one of those early Walkmans. The
Sony ones or whatever they were.
Yeah, on a cassette. So the quality is not very good.
Funny.
But yeah, that was we were contemporaries. She was just a year younger than me, and that was all part. I'd already done quite a lot of duo guitar playing. First of all, with Ike Isaacs, and it continues to be one of my favorite formats to work in.
Wow.
And Emily was, she was somebody we were both just as strong as each other when it came to accompanying.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you'd have jazz guitar players that played in groups, and they used to play in single line. They'd play really great single line solos, but hadn't put as much attention into accompanying. So I was very much into accompanying as well as soloing. So I'd give a strong accompaniment, and then when it came my turn to solo, it was like plop, 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 And I used to be quite astonished. Wow, I didn't know. I thought you were a really good guitar, but I didn't know you couldn't accompany, and it would be a real terrible shock.
Yeah.
And so it was then finding a guitar player that also had that accompanying strength, which I found with Ulf Bacanius and Frank Vignola, of course, when we play together.
Yeah.
But it's still, apart from playing solo, it's playing solo and playing in a guitar duo are still my two favorites.
Yeah, I see you like that. Yeah.
I made one duo album called Double Standards.
Oh, okay.
Where I played both parts.
Oh, really? I have to check it out. Okay.
Yeah, because the reason I played both parts was because I wanted to make a duo guitar album, but I knew exactly what both parts, how I wanted it to be.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't want to say to a guitar player, "Look, play this." I didn't want to dictate to them what to play. So I realized that would be stifling, and it wouldn't come out very well. But if I played both parts, and what I would do, I would actually play an accompanying part. I'd record it, but that wouldn't necessarily be the accompanying part that would stay on there.
Yeah, sure, because you would. Yeah.
It almost in some cases it became a guide, because then I soloed over it, and then I come up with some ideas and think, well, do you know what? That would be nice if I played those things together. And it would then inspire me to then actually go over that part, just have it as a guide, and play something on the top. And then the other guitar that would then say, well, actually, I could play this. So it became layered. So using the painting analogy, it's not like two guitar players playing together. It's like a watercolor, because you can't change it. It's what's happening.
Yeah.
But this is like oil painting.
It's like composing almost.
Like it, you go over it. You go over it. So you put some kind of bass down, and then That's your basic sketch, and then you put a basic
Yeah.
a wash of color or something. But then at any point you can change it. You can move the paint around, oil paint or,
Yeah, that's good.
acrylics or something. So it's very much like that. And because then everyone was saying, how are you going to tour with that? I said, well, I'm not. It's purely a recording
Yeah, sure.
recording project. And
Yeah.
I've done a lot here in my studio. I have a Patreon site, which is my creativity site, which is sort of the Martin Taylor Guitar Club on Patreon. And I create a lot here. I record a lot of things. And quite often I do guitar duos because it takes a bit of pressure off from playing solo.
Yeah.
Just put something else
Yeah.
in, kind of frees you up a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
But yes, it is one of my favorite combinations, without
Yeah.
a doubt.
How did, speaking of guitar duo, like how did I saw that you played with Tommy Emmanuel also, and Chet
Yeah.
Atkins, like with everyone. How did these stories then happen? Just you guys met on the road somewhere, or like usually, how do these duos happen actually? I mean, or did in the past?
Well, with Chet Atkins, I met Chet in Nashville when I was recording there, and Chet had an office. He was very powerful in Nashville. He
Sure.
could, he was a producer, A&R man, and he was Mr. Nashville. So going to his office was like getting an audience with the Pope, So
You can't believe that actually. Yeah.
so you go. So I went up there with David Hungate, who's a bass player with Toto. He produced a couple of my albums. And he said, let's go and see Chet, because everyone used to go out and just hang out with him.
Sure.
And he'd be sitting at his desk and the guitar's about, and you'd just chat, and he'd play things for you. And he had a friend of his that was a barber, and he used to cut hair in the local penitentiary.
Oh man.
And he used to record conversations he had with the prisoners, because some of them, I shouldn't laugh really, but some of them were pretty off the wall.
Yeah, sure.
And he used to like playing a lot of these conversations, and he liked a lot of British comedy, and he played some of these old Peter Sellers comedy things from the radio, and we just sort of hang out together. But when I got there, after a while, he said to me, "Do you still play Old Man River?" I said, "How do you know I play Old Man River?" He said, "Because I saw you play in London." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I came to see you with Stephane in London. I was in London one day."
Oh wow.
I said, "But you didn't come and say her." He said, "No, I didn't like to. I didn't like to come and say." So I didn't realize he'd been and seen me play. And he got a guitar out and he started. He said, I've not been able to figure out how you play that bass line. I said, "Well, I got a lot of that from you and Mel Travis." That's how I learned to do it and keep that going. But so then I just used to hang out with him quite a bit whenever I was in Nashville. And one day I was there, and he said, "I'm doing this." He was very laid back, guy. He said, "I'm doing this this TV show tomorrow, and there's a chat show, and there's a band, and are you in town tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Would you like to come on the show with me?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And so he just picks up the phone. He said, "Hi, it's Chet. I got a friend of mine here from Scotland, and I want him to play on the show with me." Okay, yeah, we'll get there. And so he was how powerful he was. Suddenly, I was on a TV show that watched by about 10 million people.
Incredible. Yeah.
And so I went on that, and I remember just before I went on, it was at the Grand Ole Opry, not the Ryman Theatre, but the big newer one. So there were several thousand people there, a few million people watching it. So I'm standing in the wings, and Chet's there. He wanted me to play something on my own. He was just being interviewed, and I said, "Chet," and people wearing Stetsons and all this kind of thing. We're all sort of country, and the band were a country band, fantastic band, all playing country music with pedal steel guitar and fiddlers and everything. And I said, "Chet, I'm a jazz musician. They're gonna hate me." you know, what should I play? And he said, just play something fast. So I just walked on, and first he gave me a great introduction. So I knew I was safe. I knew I wasn't going to be in. Nobody's going to throw anything at me. He gave me this really nice introduction, and so I went out, and I don't think I played Old Man River. I think I played. Yeah, I got rhythm, which I walk in. I used to go into it and play it very fast with this walking bass line, which I know they would appreciate because it's all the thumb pickers play that style. It was fantastic, and I think you can still find it on YouTube.
I have to check it out. Okay.
So that's how that happened, and then I said to Chet, would you please? I'm doing an album and that David Hungate is producing called Portraits.
Yeah,
and would you play a couple of duets with me? So he said, yeah, sure. So he just came in with a guitar and we played those. Now, Tommy Emmanuel, I met Tommy in Australia in 1991.
Really?
The very last tour I did with Stephane was in 1990 in Australia and New Zealand.
Wow.
And then the following year, I went back on my own to do a solo tour. And I went on a TV show in Australia called Hey Hey It's Saturday, which was a very popular Saturday night variety kind of show, a funny kind of show. They had a house band, really good show. The presenter was a guy called Daryl Summers, who was very popular, really good presenter, great entertainer. And he liked to have musical guests, and they got me on, and I went on there and did a solo thing on that. When I get back to my hotel room, the light on the phone is buzzing. So I pick the phone up, there's a message, and it's Tommy. Now, I'd heard of Tommy, but only in Australia, because at that time, he was very famous in Australia, but nowhere else. And so as soon as you go to Australia, you play the guitar, everyone says, do you know Tommy? You know Tommy? Are you as good as Tommy? That's every Australian would say that. I bet you're not as good as Tommy, are you? Real Aussie. Yeah. Tommy's the best. I bet you can't play like Tommy. Can you play like Tommy? No, I bet you can't. I thought, I've got to meet this guy.
Who is this?
So he rang me, and we had a long chat, and then he was playing a concert in Sydney at I think it's called the State Theatre or the Capitol Theatre. I think it was called State Theatre, and it'd always been his dream to play there ever since he was a kid and went along there. So he said, would you come and play a couple of tunes with me, be my guest on it? And I said, well, I'd love to. I said, but I'm flying to Singapore on that day, so that's a shame. So then I thought about it, and I thought, I can change the flight. I don't need to go. I can go the following day. So I changed my flight and went on there, met Tommy, and then we became really good friends. From that.
Oh, beautiful.
Then I get a phone call one day. I'm at Heathrow Airport in London on my way back to America. I get a call, and it's Tommy. Hello, mate. It's Tommy here. All right. How you doing, Governor? So I said, well, yeah, great. Where are you? He said, I'm in England. He said, I live here now. He said, no, I haven't got any gigs and nobody knows who I am. I said, well, okay, well, I'm off to America for a couple of weeks. So when I come back, my son my son still does manage me. My son was managing me. Oh. And I said, I'll put you in touch with James and we'll get something happening for you. So that happened. My son started booking Tommy. Initially, and also I had a guitar festival at that time in Scotland, in the village where I was from, and I got Tommy to be the first guest on that, and he became a regular. He was there every year. We had the festival for 6 years. He played on every single one. Then a bit later on, when I started playing with Bill Wyman, Bill Wyman, when he left the Rolling Stones, he didn't play for about 10 years. Then he decided to start up again and start to play. Him and his friend Terry Taylor decided to start recording some things and getting musicians to come in and play. So they wanted some jazzy type of things. Georgie Fame was on organ and singing. So Albert Lee was in the band. But actually, the band hadn't formed yet. It didn't even have a name. We were just a bunch of musicians that went in and recorded things, and Charlie Watts came in and played on some tracks.
Oh, wow.
Chris Rea, Eric Clapton played on a few things, George Harrison, and so it's just Bill's mates playing. And so I was in on this, and then eventually I said, "What are you going to do with this, Bill?" He said, "I don't know. I might form a band. I don't know." I don't. Eventually, he did form a band, Bill Wyman's Rhythm Kings. So I was like a founder member of that band, and we had a tour in the UK, and Bill was looking for an opening act. So he asked me, and I spoke to my son, I said, maybe Tommy could do that. And I thought, well, Tommy's so dynamic that actually it might detract from the show, because, you know, but it'd be a great thing for Tommy, because he'll get an audience. He'll get a big audience because we're playing big venues, and he's going to absolutely blow everybody's minds, you know, when they've never seen him before, as he always did. So Tommy did that tour, and that really started that thing for him then in the UK. And then further, then of course, I think he came on some of the European tours that we did as well. I think so. And then, so then from then, Tommy then went to America and met up with his manager, Gina, and they just got in a car and just drove all over America, like he did in England. Yeah. He would play anywhere. Tommy would go and play in a bar down the street, because he knew if he played there, everyone would go nuts over what he did. Next thing you'd know, he'd play the town, a bigger venue, then he'd play a theater, then he'd play a concert hall. So that's how he did. And he loves to play. He wants to play all the time. He's not like me. I don't want to play all the time. I sit in front of the TV at home all the time. Take my dog for a walk. But Tommy, he just lives for playing. He just loves it, and he loves playing for people. So he built that up in the UK. Then he went to America, did exactly the same thing on a far bigger scale, of course, going across America. And I used to play at Chet Atkins convention every year when Chet was alive. And I said to Tommy had met Chet before, and I said to Tommy, "You've got to go and play at Chet's convention in Nashville." And I can remember that first year he went there, and people were saying, "Who is this guy from Australia? Is he any good?" I said, "Well, just go in and have a listen." And I remember sitting outside that, sitting at the bar having a beer, and everyone was in there. And right when they come out, this is going to be really interesting. And the doors opened, and you saw people in a mixed state of shock and rapture and ecstasy coming out. "Oh man, that was it. That was amazing. I told you. Now, I mean, the festival has really become Tommy's festival. You know, he's kind of taken over the mantle.
Stole the show,
from Chet. But I'm glad to have been part of that. And of course, then we made our album together, The Colonel and the Governor, and we toured America, Europe, and Asia together with that. So that was fun to do. To sit down with two acoustic guitars and play. So that was the kind of the culmination of that long period of first meeting Tommy in Australia, and that kind of that journey. But we're two very different kind of people. We're really good friends, but we're very different. You know, I love to perform, and I love to play for people. It's the best. You know, it really is great. But I don't want to do it every night. Tommy does. It's what he just lives for. And you know, I like coming into my studio here, creating music here. You know, I live in the Scottish Highlands, so you know.
Oh man, beautiful. Yeah.
I like to walk in the mountains and everything. Take my dog for a walk. So I have another life outside of my musical life, but for him, he's just totally dedicated
to music,
to that, and that is what it takes if you want somebody that wants to emulate Tommy's kind of lifestyle. That's what you have to do, but it comes it comes at a price.
Yeah,
And,
sacrifice. Yeah,
because everything else has to go to the wayside. You know, I
Yeah.
like being with my wife and my friends here, and
yeah,
but then I have friends all over the world because of, you know, having
playing. Yeah,
toured all over the world all these years.
yeah,
So I do like to get out too. So it's been interesting since COVID, 18 months of just being at home, and I really enjoyed it. You know, it was great, and I was very productive. I wrote four of these books. I did a lot on my Patreon site. I kept in contact with my online students
Yeah.
on Artist Works. So I had a lot to do, and playing live isn't the only thing that I do. I also write music for TV, so it wasn't a problem for me in missing playing live so much, or financially, because it
Yeah.
hit
Yeah.
so many musicians.
We're hit by
And
that. Yeah.
anybody involved in the arts and the visual arts, the musical arts, the
Yeah.
performing arts. That's what I'm trying to say. Everybody, including, you know, the business side of it, technicians, sound
Yeah,
people,
light
lighting.
engineers, everyone.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's massive, and I was able just to be here. I live in a nice place, and just do my thing. But when I did eventually get out and play after 18 months, it was really nice to do. But I did say to myself, yeah, this is great doing this, but I don't want to do it at the same level that I was doing it before, at the same intensity.
I know what you mean.
I'm 65, but I think I'm 25 most of the time. And it's not till I'm out on the road and I think to myself, why am I so tired? Why do my feet hurt? Why does my back hurt? What's going on? And I just realized that most people my age retire.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
No,
you know,
funny.
it's funny because I'm actually having a second studio built in my garden. I'm going to be like Abbey Road. I'm going to have Studio 2.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was talking to the builder. He's just a year younger than me, and he was telling me. He said, I'm getting too old for this building. He said I'm retiring at Christmas. He said, when are you retiring? I said, I don't know, because I don't know what I'd actually retire from. I can retire from not traveling so much.
Yeah, for instance. Yeah.
Or not putting so much pressure on myself to do things. But apart from that, you can't just stop. You know, when you've been playing a stringed instrument since you were 3 years old.
Exactly. It's part of you. Yeah.
But it's not like I feel I have to play it all the time. I don't play every day, you know. And,
Yeah.
I'm quite lazy with that.
No, but it's true what you're saying. You know, for me it was the same when I played the first gig after COVID. I was like, I love it.
What was that like?
I loved
like
it.
for you?
But you know, like what you were saying. I mean, I'm younger than you, but still, like for me, it was like, you know, grabbing the amp and taking my Fender 25 kilo amp into the car. You know, being there like earlier to do the sound check, and then the hanging and the waiting.
Yeah.
And I loved it, but then in the end I was like, well, I did miss it, but in a way I also did not miss it so much. Like it would be like now, it's a, you know, I also could teach online and everything. And so I know what you're saying. That's what I mean. So
I don't travel with an amp, but I travel with a suitcase and things. And the only time that did come to me was when I went back to the States, and I was touring there and recently in Europe. And I'm standing in airports, and it's a lot more difficult now. And all the things you have to go through and get PCR tests and security and all kinds of things and paperwork you have to do. It does make you think, do I really want to do this? But then you get on stage and you play, and that all disappears.
Yeah.
You know, all of that, you say, no, this is why I do it. And I do that. And when you see the enjoyment the audience are getting from the music, and you realize they've missed it because they haven't had this for a long time. You know, some people really prefer live music, to go and see somebody live. And it got me thinking a lot, which I've been, obviously 18 months, I've been contemplating many things. And you think about, when you're younger, we're very selfish, because we have to be.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to, who am I? Who am I? What am I? What do I want to be? You're trying all these things. So it all revolves around you. And once you've kind of established something in your established things in your life, then things change. And you get to the point where actually life isn't all about me.
Yeah.
Life's about actually what I can do for other people. And that's why I started to teach 11 years ago, because I'd never taught before. When I was approached by Artistworks in California to do the online teaching, and I didn't know whether I would actually be able to do it because I'd never taught before, and I hadn't gone for lessons myself. And I thought, well, yeah, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to embrace the 21st century. And I could barely send or receive an email. And all this computer and recording equipment arrived, and I thought, wow, I need an 8-year-old to show me how this all works.
Yeah.
But I got a musician friend of mine, a young guy who's into all this kind of thing, and had been into it way before me, and he kind of guided me. And then I thought, well, I don't know whether I'm going to be a good teacher or not. But I'll give it a try, and if I'm not going to inflict myself on guitar students. I'll just gently walk away from it. And but I noticed there was a lot of doubt at the beginning for me for the first few months, because I thought, am I teaching properly? Are they learning from me? Do they understand what I'm doing? But then as I started to see the video exchanges we'd done, I noticed a marked improvement in everyone's
progress.
playing.
Yeah.
And it was really, in many cases, it was very, very quick. And I thought, well, I don't really know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm going to, something is working. So I need to work on being a teacher. And one thing I realized was it's not enough just to show somebody what you do. That isn't teaching, that's demonstrating.
Yeah.
And teaching includes demonstration, of course. Sometimes you need to demonstrate what you're doing. But teaching is to do with having a method and having steps and things that, and actually giving them names and putting them into some kind of order.
Yeah.
So, but if you want to improvise, it's like, so a guitar player will come to me and they'll say, I've got all these ideas, but I can't put them on the guitar. Then I say, well, I've got a method for that. And I have something called think, sing, play. Think it, sing it, play it. And there'll be a gap in between that. But if you keep on doing it, after a while, that gap gets less and less and less. And eventually,
you do it.
Yeah. I come up with these phrases. Now, I'm not singing along to my playing. I'm playing along to my singing. It's the other way around.
Yeah.
Although after a while,
it's kind of
the two kind of merge. But that's when you have that connection with the guitar. And we all know what it's like. I mean, I still have it myself at times when I've got ideas and it doesn't translate immediately to the instrument. But that's the way. Singing is the key to that. How do I make a solo guitar arrangement of a standard? I can teach you that. I teach you these 7 steps to it, and we break it down. We just learn the chord structure. We learn the melody, and then the 3rd step we have a chord melody.
Yeah.
Most guitar players stop there. That's only the beginning. Because chord melodies are really boring. I don't play chord melody style. There is chord melody within it, but I'm often described as being a chord melody player, and everyone misses the point completely. I'm not. I'm a linear player. I play lines. There's like a piano player would, like an orchestrator would write for an orchestra. And to learn how to do that, at first it seems very complicated. But if you just break it down, go backwards, and then build it back up again, go back to the sketch, and start coloring it in, then you can do it, and you can do that in a very short time. When you get really familiar with it, and you get familiar with that, you start building up your own vocabulary around that. Then you can start to improvise on it. So if I'm playing 3 lines, I can improvise on all 3 lines at the same time. It's not because I've split my brain up, but because I am seeing it as one whole thing. But in order to do that, you have to go backwards. It's like I was saying, I learned by ear, but then I learned the theory afterwards. If I'd learned the theory first, I'd have been stuck with that, and it would have been more difficult to break out of that. Let the music come first. Another thing about improvisation, I'll say very quickly. I tend to talk a lot, as you probably know.
No, please, it's beautiful. That's why we're here. So
One word of advice about improvisation. I was talking about melodic improvisation. If you get stuck, if you have a brain freeze, and all of a sudden your creative juices completely dry up, here's the piece of advice which will always help you. Do not be afraid to play the melody. Yeah.
Man, yeah.
Jazz musicians often think, well, I can't do that. I'm improvising now, so I shouldn't be playing the melody.
So true.
Just bring the melody back in, and then vary the melody, weave about the melody, and you get around there. So you've always got that framework, the melody and the harmony. You've always got that under the surface helping you. If you have a brain freeze or you can't think what to play yet, don't revert back to all those Eric Clapton licks that you learned before you learned to play jazz, because it won't sound good. It will sound great if you're playing blues, because they're blues licks. But I hear it so many times. Don't do that. You're getting out of context. You're getting out of character.
So true.
So just play the melody. Stay in context, and just play a little bit of the melody. You'll pick yourself up, and you'll then be able to go into something. That melody will then vary, and then that will lead into something, and you'll find your way back. Never be afraid of playing the melody. It will always help you.
That's a beautiful advice, but it's true, actually. Yeah, I mean, I was teaching the last week Charlie Kristen's solos to one student with Benny Goodman, and it's like, man, it's all about, he goes from the melody, and it's like incredible what he plays. It's like what you said, like the old guys.
Well, Charlie Christian, that's a perfect example, because what he played wasn't complex.
No, but
it was
beautiful.
Swinging. It was very rhythmic, and it was all the right things with a great sound.
Yeah,
you don't need any more than that. The same with Benny Goodman.
Yeah,
and that's another thing. As a guitar player, don't only listen to guitar players. Listen to other instruments. I'm very inspired by Benny Goodman. My dad used to play a lot of Benny Goodman records, and a lot of his lines. Benny Goodman was an absolute giant, one of the greatest jazz musicians ever.
Incredible lines.
I worked with a number of musicians that all worked with Benny Goodman, and I always liked talking to them about him. He was very dedicated to practicing. He practiced. He used to get up very early in the morning. Where he lived in New York, the apartment had a swimming pool in it, and he used to like to swim. So before breakfast, he would have a swim and do 2 hours of practice.
Wow!
Before he even
that's dedication.
Even got up.
Wow.
He was very, very dedicated to that. So another musician that inspired me for single lines is Stan Getz.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Stan Getz had such a fantastic range.
Yeah.
Well, he plays something really juicy, sounding things in the low register, then he'd suddenly do like a real kind of
Yeah.
squawking sound high up, you know, and he would just have this full range, not just playing in one area all the time. But probably piano players were one of my biggest influences,
Really?
especially
Oh,
when
wow.
it came to playing solo,
Yeah.
because I didn't really have guitar players to listen to until I heard Joe Pass.
Yeah.
And that was a big moment for me.
The
Hearing Joe
Virtuoso
Pass,
records, or
Virtuoso.
yeah,
And
it's
I said,
incredible.
that's it. Because I remember as a kid, I went to see Segovia play, and I'm thinking to myself, I'd love to do that, but playing jazz. Just go
Yeah.
on a sort and playing solo. 2 concerts I saw when I was young that were a big thing for me. At either end of the spectrum was Andre Segovia and Jimi Hendrix.
Oh wow, you saw Jimmie
I saw
live?
Jimi Hendrix
Oh man,
play
how was that like for you?
when I was. That was absolutely amazing.
Mind blown,
But
right?
actually, that trio with Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell,
Mitchell.
I listened to it. I thought that's a jazz trio.
Yeah, I mean Mitch Mitchell is like, you know,
He was a jazz drummer.
Yeah, he's everywhere.
Mitch Mitchell used to go to a music shop. He used to take drum lessons from Jim Marshall, the Marshall amplifiers.
Wow.
Jim had a shop in North London, and Mitch Mitchell was actually a child actor. He was in a lot of these Ealing comedies
I didn't know.
as a kid. Yeah, and he lived around that area, I think, like Ealing, that kind of way. And he took drum lessons out of the back of the shop of Jim Marshall's shop, who of course then was the creator of Marshall amplifiers. And then he got a little bit older. He got a Saturday job working in there because he just wanted to hang out and get a Saturday job. When he got older, he started to play, and he went back to see Jim Marshall, and he said, by this time he was in his early 20s, 20 or something. He said, I'm working with this incredible guitar player from America called Jimi Hendrix, but we want a really big amps. Can you do it? So that's where the stack was invented.
Man, yeah, that's
I knew Jim very well. He was a great guy, great character. I knew a lot of those older guys. Like I knew Jim Burns as well. Jet Burns guitars. They were all these kind of crazily eccentric English inventors.
Yeah. Amazing. That's beautiful.
And that's another thing about starting to play when you're very young, is that you become like a bridge to the past. Ulf and I talk about this because, of course, he worked with Oscar Peterson for 10 years. I worked with Stephane Grappelli for 11 years. But I worked with a lot of other musicians from way back. There's a picture behind me. You'll see a picture of that saxophone player. That's Benny Waters, and he was playing in the 20s.
Really old school.
Yeah, real old school, and that's actually me sitting.
Oh yeah.
In that
oh wow.
I think I was about 19 or 20.
Oh,
yeah, about
wow.
20 when that picture was taken before
That's
Stephane.
amazing.
So you get to meet all these people from that era, and that's why it becomes important. Coming back to what I was going to say about when I started to teach, I realized that actually what we need to do as musicians, whatever you do, doesn't matter whatever you do, you have to complete the circle. You have to learn it, you have to do it, and then you have to teach it. And that's something that I can't remember where I think my son James was probably he's a international keynote speaker. He speaks on creativity and artificial intelligence, so he's up on lots of things. But I remember one of his talks that I saw him doing. I think he was in Singapore or somewhere. He did a TED talk as well, and that was one of the things, talking about that circle, and it's important to complete that circle.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a totally selfish act, because when we're learning it and we're doing it, we're selfish. We have to be. because it's all about us.
Yeah, you're doing it for
Then
you.
then it stops to be about us. It becomes about others.
I agree. Yeah.
And things that I've learned from those people from before, some of whom were born in the 19th century, the end of the 19th century. I mean, Stephane was born in 1908.
Yeah, amazing.
And so I'm bringing stuff from there that they got from people before them. I sometimes give advice that Stephane gave me that Maurice Chevalier gave him. You know, so you got to,
Yeah.
you can't let those things die. They've got to
No.
continue. But
Yeah.
you must also credit them. You can't say, oh, you can't take the credit for it and say, this is my
The lineage and heritage.
these are my words of wisdom. No, this came from the people that came before me.
To spread the knowledge, yeah, and the history. That's so important. I think so.
Because you discover nothing is actually new.
No, it's you know, sometimes I teach the students, they're like, yeah, I discovered this guy. And I was like, well, but you know, I don't know. Jim Hall did that, and Jim Hall learned that from Charlie Christian, and Charlie Christian did blah, blah, and they're like, oh, really? Oh, well, yeah, duh, you know. It's
Yeah, we've got to keep an open mind and open
Yeah,
ears.
yeah,
And
that's
because you listen to a guitar player play, and you can usually tell who their influences are.
Yeah, definitely.
Sometimes you'll get a guitar player that's got one really strong influence.
Yeah,
So there's legions of guitar players who Tommy Emmanuel is their only influence, really.
yeah,
So you've got the clones of Tommy Emmanuel. Some go on to then develop their own thing, but many,
Voice, yeah.
and they're perfectly happy. That's, you know, because they love Tommy so much, they just want to play like Tommy. So that's what they do. So it's very obvious. Or you'll hear a bit of this and a bit of that in a player, so you can tell who they've listened to. Why my playing isn't the way I play isn't so obvious. Obviously,
True,
you can hear
yeah.
certain things in my playing. Isn't so obvious because with my solo playing, I got most of that from listening to piano players. So I'm putting the piano onto here. So you're actually hearing Bill Evans and Art Tatum and Garrett and Bud Powell. And you're hearing accordion players that I like Art Van Dam, Fibes players who were inspiration. Some of the arrangements that I'm doing, they've come from orchestrators like Robert Farnan and Nelson Riddle.
Yeah.
And you know, that's where that's come from.
Mm.
So it's not immediately obvious.
Recognizable. Yeah. Like as a influence.
My son does a whole talk. In fact, you can find him on if you go to jamestaylor.me. James Taylor is an easy name to remember if you're a guitar player.
Yeah.
Well, Martin Taylor's an easy name to remember if you're a guitar player.
True, also.
But if you go to jamestaylor.me, you'll see a lot of his talks on there. And there was one he does about the myth of the lone genius. We like to think of the lone genius. We like to think of Michelangelo as the lone genius. It just came from Leonardo da Vinci. It came from, but where did it come from? It didn't come from no. Charlie Parker. These are every so often we get these genius players, or in other fields of endeavor or the arts or whatever, and they just take it into another direction. Very often, people can't take it at first because it's so off the wall. When people first heard Charlie Parker, they just thought it was a noise because they hadn't heard anything like that. Stephane Grappelli told me that when him and Django first formed the Hot Club of France, because there was no such thing as a jazz concert, people didn't go to listen to jazz. They went to dance, so they played for dancing. He said people used to dance and they put their fingers in, they put their hands over their ears. And what's that noise? You know, because they hadn't heard anything like that before. But it's all come from somewhere else before. Charlie Parker was influenced by other people that came before that. Miles Davis said without Louis Armstrong, there would have been no Miles Davis.
Sure. Coltrane, everyone. Yeah. I mean, you know, we can go on. Yeah.
There would be any of us. So you can look back at a guitar player from the old age and maybe be disparaging about them and say, well, I don't really like that, it was a bit corny, or say something about it. It wasn't such a good technically, or I didn't like this, or something. And I say, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be who you are today if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, the
That's
guy.
one cog in the wheel that makes you who you are. So
Exactly.
when we listen to our musical ancestors, we have to be totally respectful to them, even if you
Absolutely.
say, well, that's not really, but that's, you're indebted to them. You wouldn't be where you are now if it wasn't for them.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Cool, Martin. Thank you so much, sir.
Well, thank you.
Beautiful to listen to you. I mean,
Well,
you have
nice.
so many stories in history. It's beautiful. And
Oh, I haven't even got started.
I know, like
We'll have to do it again.
we have to do it like on a monthly basis. Everyone, like,
Mind you, you'll discover after a while I just keep repeating myself. That's what
no.
happens. And because I'm getting older, I forget.
Oh yeah, they're like, no. But beautiful.
Would you like me to play something? So
Yeah, please. Let's
Okay.
let's finish it with this. That's beautiful.
Okay, I have to take the headphones off because
Yes.
there's a delay on these headphones. If I play with these on, I start slowing down. Ooh, wait a minute. Girl talk.
The Martin Taylor Guitar Orchestra.
Well, you know,
Beautiful.
that was written. You know, that was written by Neil Hefti.
Yeah, yeah.
Who wrote a lot of big band things.
Yeah.
And do you know what else he wrote?
Neil Hefti. Oh shit, you'll get me now. But yeah, when you say it.
Okay.
Really, I didn't know that.
He wrote the Batman.
The Batman theme. Yeah. Wow.
When he died a few years ago,
know that.
Every obituary only seemed to mention the Batman theme, but he wrote lots of great things.
Yeah, standards.
Um,
Beautiful. Amazing.
Yeah, and that was written really for big band, and I used to hear big bands playing that, and that's why I got that whole thing of getting some
This
big
approach,
band type
yeah.
things, and like arranging key change, going from E
Yeah.
to A flat.
Yeah.
Because normally you go up with a key change, but this goes down
Yeah.
minor.
I saw that you did.
Now I'm in E flat. Then when you go up to E, it's got that uplifting feel. So this is an E flat.
Yeah.
So when I go up to E,
Yeah.
just has that nice uplifting.
It's beautiful.
feel.
Yeah. I love,
And
you
then
know,
trying to get that
these
big band
lines.
thing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the sax
horns.
sections
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
doing that?
So
I think it
beautiful.
was,
So beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, Andre Segovia said that the guitar is a miniature orchestra, and that's how I think of it when I play solo.
That's how it sounded. Like, no, that's why I said it.
Someone else said guitar is like looking down the wrong end of a pair of binoculars.
One way. One way to approach it. Yeah. No, but beautiful. Thank you so much for playing and for
Thank you.
sharing
Thanks,
some
Simon.
of the
Thank you very
stories.
much for inviting me, and best wishes to everyone watching this.
Yeah.
And enjoy your guitar journey. And,
Yeah.
It's great fun. If you play guitar, you've actually picked the best instrument there is in the world, because it's a harmonic instrument and we can carry it around with us, and we can have beautiful instruments that we can love.
True. True.
We're very fortunate.
We are. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, Martin, if you're ever around, please let me know in Europe, or I mean, close to where I live. Let's get together. And
if you want to know where I am, my website, martintaylor.com. You can find all the things that I do there. My online guitar school with Artist Works. My Patreon site. Anyone that wants to join that, I do lots of things there. We do a monthly hangout. I create music all the time here, videos. I put up some of my live things as well. I do guitar conversations like this, where I chat with guitar players, and we have this monthly hangout that includes an open mic session. So anyone that wants to play, we got a great group of guitar enthusiasts there, and it's a nice community.
It is.
If anyone wants to join us,
Yeah.
I'd love to see you. Come and check it out. If you don't like it, you don't like it. You don't have to stay. But it is cool, and everything stays on there. So there's hundreds and hundreds of videos, and I also do a thing. I'm just about to do one today called tea breaks, and I just sit here with a cup of tea, and I talk about a subject. I just take a subject.
Oh wow! Beautiful.
What's my subject going to be today? My subject today is going to be on the senses, how we don't just hear music, we feel it with all us. We have it within all our senses.
Wow, beautiful.
So, or my thoughts on it. Of course, it's not definitive, and it's probably,
no, sure, but yeah,
somebody will probably correct me. So that's not true. Probably a neuroscientist or somebody that's a clever person that's been to university. But it's just my thoughts. It's just that. It's just my thoughts on things.
Sure. Cool. Great.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure.
Dr. Jazz.